Imagine if one day you woke up and everything seemed normal, but something wasn't right. You check your phone and there are no notifications, no messages, no news. You try to contact your friends, but their phones are off. And when you turn on the TV, all you see is static. Your computer has no connection. So you decide to go outside, and that's when you realize what's going on. There isn't a single person on the street, no traffic, no cars, nothing. It seems like the entire world disappeared into thin air. What just happened? Where is everyone? Where is the internet? This unsettling scenario may seem like a plot from a science fiction movie, but it's actually closer to reality than you might think. In today's episode of the Great Internet Blackout, we'll explore what would happen if the internet went down for an extended period. Would civilization collapse? Could we survive without Google? And most importantly, how long could we last? Let's find out. On October 29, 2022, internet services experienced a major outage in the United States, affecting major websites such as Amazon, Netflix, Reddit, Spotify, HBO Max, etc. Users from across the country reported issues with accessing these sites. According to the outage monitoring website Down Detector, the issue was first reported at approximately 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. At its peak, more than 6,000 incidents were reported in less than 30 minutes. But fortunately, the problem was resolved in about an hour and a half. However, this incident highlights the fragility of our internet infrastructure. A relatively small failure cascade caused significant disruption to millions of people's lives. Just imagine if the downtime lasted longer. To put things into perspective, think back to 2008 when Facebook went down for over 25 hours. Although not globally, but still pretty widespread. In 2017, 15 million users reported being unable to log in. In fact, during that outage, Facebook lost 4.1% of its daily active users. That's roughly equivalent to the population of Belgium. Now picture this. Instead of losing 4.1%, what if the entire internet shut down and we lost access to it forever? How would our world change? In a recent survey conducted by TechHeisel, nearly half of Americans, in fact, couldn't live without the internet for more than a week. Nearly 20% wouldn't make it 2 days. In a similar survey conducted in the UK, 38% of respondents said they couldn't cope without the internet for more than a week. 13% admitted they wouldn't be able to manage even a day. It's clear that modern society has become heavily reliant on the internet. But if it did go away, how much damage would it cause? Let's start with the basics. What causes internet outages? There are many potential causes, including hardware failures, software glitches, network congestion, cyber attacks, and natural disasters. Fortunately, most outages are relatively minor and are resolved quickly, but sometimes they can be more serious. For example, in February 2021, a submarine internet cable was damaged off the coast of California, leading to slowdowns and outages for several major websites. Similarly, a power outage at a data center in Virginia in 2011 caused major disruptions to services like Amazon Web Services and Netflix. These incidents highlight the vulnerability of our internet infrastructure to physical damage. A single cable or power outage can affect millions of users. But in general, the internet is quite resilient. Even if one part of the network goes down, data can often be routed through other paths. But what if the entire internet went down? One possible cause of a total internet outage is a solar superstorm. A solar superstorm occurs when a massive burst of energy is released from the sun. This energy can disrupt important functions on Earth, including our telecommunications systems. In 1859, an intense solar storm caused widespread telegraph system disruptions and even led to spontaneous combustion of telegraph paper. If something similar were to happen today, it could have devastating consequences. For instance, communication satellites could be knocked offline, GPS systems could malfunction, and power grids could be overloaded, plunging cities into darkness. Another potential cause is an electromagnetic pulse or EMP attack. An EMP is a burst of electromagnetic energy that can interfere with electronic devices over a wide area. An EMP attack could potentially take down large parts of the electrical grid, communications networks, and computer systems. The impact could be devastating. Power outages, communications blackouts, and economic chaos would likely ensue. A third possibility is a cyber attack. Cyber attacks can take many forms, such as distributed denial of service attacks, malware infections, and data breaches. A particularly devastating cyber attack could take down critical infrastructure and plunge the world into chaos. Governments and businesses are constantly working to improve their cybersecurity measures to prevent such attacks from happening. But the threat remains, and a large-scale internet outage due to a cyber attack cannot be ruled out. So let's say the internet has gone down due to any of these reasons. What happens next? The immediate aftermath of an internet outage would be relatively calm. People would initially go about their daily routines unaware of the outage. After all, life doesn't stop just because the internet went down. However, problems would start to arise shortly. Grocery stores would soon run out of food and basic supplies. Transportation systems would be thrown into chaos, and financial markets would come to a standstill. Hospitals would struggle to function, and emergency services would be overwhelmed. Within a few days, the streets would be filled with desperate people trying to find food, water, and other essential supplies. In this situation, social order would likely break down quickly. Looting and violence would become commonplace, and the government would struggle to maintain control. Essential services such as healthcare and transportation would be decimated. The economy would grind to a halt, and global trade would cease. Within a week, the country would descend into anarchy. Of course, not everyone would be affected equally. The wealthy would likely fare better than the poor. They would have access to resources like food, water, and medical care. They could also afford to flee to safer areas or even leave the country altogether. But the majority of people would struggle to survive. Food and water shortages would be widespread, and disease would spread rapidly. Without refrigeration, food would spoil quickly, and sanitation systems would fail. Basic hygiene practices would become difficult, leading to outbreaks of infectious diseases. As time passes, the situation would only get worse. Within a few weeks, most people would have exhausted their food and water supplies. Starvation and dehydration would become common, and death rates would soar. Without electricity, water treatment plants would be unable to function. Rivers and lakes would become unsafe to drink from, and rainfall would be the only source of clean water. But collecting rainwater would be challenging without electricity to power pumps or even light at night. Within a month, most people would have died from starvation, dehydration, or disease. Only the strong and lucky would survive. Those who lived through the initial chaos would have to contend with the harsh reality of a post-internet world. They would need to grow their own food, find alternative sources of energy, and build new communities. Some might even try to rebuild the internet. However, it's unclear whether this would be possible given the lack of resources and infrastructure. It's important to remember that the internet isn't just a technological marvel, but also a lifeline for billions of people around the world. It provides us with vital services such as communication, education, and access to information. Without the internet, our world would be vastly different. It's hard to imagine how we could function as a global community without it. Some people might argue that life would go on as usual. We would revert to older technologies such as landline phones and newspapers. But the reality is that the internet has become so ingrained in our society that it's impossible to imagine life without it. We rely on it for everything from banking to healthcare. Losing access to the internet would have catastrophic consequences. If the internet were to go down for an extended period, the effects would be felt around the world. Global trade would cease, economies would collapse, and social order would break down. Basic services such as healthcare and transportation would be decimated, and disease and starvation would spread rapidly. It's a grim scenario, but one that we must be prepared for. While it's highly unlikely that the internet will go down for an extended period, it's always possible that something could go wrong. We should take steps to ensure that we can survive if it does. This includes having a backup plan for communication, diversifying our food sources, and building a strong community. We must also be aware of the potential causes of an internet outage and take steps to mitigate them. This includes protecting our infrastructure from cyber attacks, preparing for natural disasters, and investing in redundant systems. The internet has become an essential part of our lives. It's time to start thinking about how we can keep it up and running.